My name is Stefan Thompson, and welcome to the podcast. My guest today is Johnny Daniels, the head of the From the Depths Foundation. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. What a great studio, and it's lovely to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Johnny, could you tell me some more about From the Depths, the work you do with the righteous, how it all started?
Whoa. How long do we have? No, so From the Depths I started the foundation about 10 years ago. And it actually came from, I grew up surrounded by Holocaust survivors. As a Jew growing up in London, England, it was just part of my everyday life, really. My great-grandfather was from here in Poland. Mm-hmm. His entire family were murdered by the German Nazis in the Holocaust. And I grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust. And it always played a massive impact in my life and how I viewed everything. And as I started to get older and have my own children, my eldest daughter was named after her great-grandmother who survived Auschwitz-Birkenau and passed just before she was born. I started to realize that impact that Holocaust survivors have on all of us won't be the same impact that it will have on our children, because unfortunately there won't be that many left. Mm-hmm. And then I was working in the Israeli parliament at the time, and Prime Minister Netanyahu gave a big speech in the United Nations. It was a time when Iran was threatening Israel and Ahmadinejad was saying all these crazy things. And Netanyahu stood there and he said, we've learned our lessons from the past. If a crazy man says he's going to kill us, we better pay attention. And everybody went crazy. Everyone said, how can he make this Holocaust comparison? And for me, it was obvious that this is the lesson that we should have learned from that time, is that if a crazy man is going to try and kill us, we better listen to him and make sure it doesn't happen again. But still he was attacked, and I started to look around and ask around and speaking to members of parliament, and the majority of the Knesset, of Israel's parliament, had never even been to Auschwitz. They'd never seen the German Nazi death camps with their own eyes. Now, I'd only gone a year beforehand for the first time. I'd never wanted to go myself. And I'd been there and I understood things differently. And so we started 10 years ago with the idea to bring Israel's parliament to Auschwitz-Birkenau. We held a huge event in 2014 where the majority of the Knesset came to Auschwitz for one day. We held a session of the Knesset just outside in Krakow, Poland. And hundreds of international parliamentarians. It was an amazing, very important event. And I thought, okay, I've done my part. Mm-hmm. But then what happened is people started to reach out to me. I did a huge amount in the media, and people started to reach out to me with personal stories, saying, hey, look, there's this Holocaust survivor who needs help. There's this story of this righteous nation who needs help. Stuff was happening. People needed help and needed support. And I was in a position that I could do that. So that's really how the foundation was started. And it's developed into something that I didn't expect. It's developed into an amazing, amazing opportunity to stand up, to give back, and to do what's right. All the way from working with this incredible project that we have, this tour with Holocaust survivors all around the world. In fact, I'll be going next month, all being well in Israel. I'll be flying to North America, then from there actually to South America, visiting Holocaust survivors in Guatemala and in other places, which is just unbelievable. And at the same time, we also have an incredible project that supports and helps and works with and records the testimonies of the last living righteous amongst the nations, non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Second World War.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's been 10 years. I didn't realize it was. It's almost 10 years to the.
Yeah, it's.
You started 10 years ago. Crazy, huh?
It is. Time flies.
Time flies.
It's. I didn't. It only hit me recently that I was like, wow, I've been doing this for quite a while by this point. But it's remarkable to see the impact that it's made. Yeah. And, I look back at so many of the Holocaust survivors and righteous amongst nations that are no longer with us.
Yeah, I have the same thing with World War II veterans. It's such a strange feeling that these friendships you make along the way, and suddenly they're no longer there.
Yeah, but this is also the importance of doing what we're doing. You have this incredible platform. I have my platform. We do so much together. And this opportunity that we have to tell these people's stories, we are the continuation. Actually, just before I started my foundation, I had breakfast in Jerusalem with Elie Wiesel, the Nobel laureate, Holocaust survivor, the most remarkable man.
Is he still alive?
No. This was, unfortunately, he passed away, I think.
Quite recently, right?
No, quite a few years ago, I think. Yeah. So I sat down with Professor Wizard in Jerusalem, and we had breakfast together. And I said, look, I want to maybe be involved in Holocaust memory and memorial and education, but who am I? Right? I'm clearly not a survivor. Mm-hmm. I don't have letters before or after my name.
Yeah.
I don't have 5,000 degrees from universities and a bunch of nonsense. How dare I talk about such a subject? And he said to me, John, he says, you got it all wrong. He says, you have to talk about this. He says, you are my witness. He says, if your generation don't start standing and telling the stories and telling our stories, everything is going to be lost and forgotten. And this is also what you're doing. Mm-hmm. We're in a position where we have a voice, we have platforms, and we're continuing these people's messages, their stories. Even over the last 2 and a bit months since October 7th and mm-hmm. the horrendous pogrom, mass murder of Jews that took place in Israel, it's been, I look back sometimes to some of these interviews and recordings that I had with survivors who are no longer with us, and it really shook me up. Mm. The stories are so similar.
Yeah.
You hear of Jews being killed just because they're Jews. The mass atrocities and attacks and rapes and all of these things that happened by the German Nazis mm-hmm. and the collaborators during the Holocaust. It was all the stories are coming back, and I think that's what shook me up so much. It really is wild, and it's a very sad situation that we have today in a horrible world that we live in, that these kind of things can happen again.
Yeah, but it is also there is a sense of that the time that has passed means that it's less and less real, right? I don't know if you feel that as more and more of the people you knew. It's funny because being so involved in it, even I feel that sort of World War II is slipping away out of reach. It's such a strange feeling, right? But imagine if that's the case for me, and I'm potentially for you as well, imagine how that must be the case for people who have no interest or didn't know a single veteran or didn't know a single righteous among the nations or didn't know a single Holocaust survivor. It feels so far away now. We're reaching that cutoff point where World War I, for example. I remember when I must have been towards the end of primary school, probably. The last Tommy died.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the last connection to World War I. It's gone.
And World War I mean, that's a really interesting point because how much do any of us know about World War I?
Yeah.
Right, it was the Great War, right? Like literally, that was what it was called. It was a horrendous war.
Horrendous.
Tens of millions of people slaughtered.
Yeah.
For our freedom.
Yeah.
And none of us know anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's gone.
Yeah.
Right. And you're right.
And it's out of reach. It really is out of reach. They made that film recently out of colorized World War I footage, which was meant to kind of, I think that They Will Never Grow Old. It was called. It's quite moving to see these images completely restored and colorized, and they made them look so much more real. But there still was that sense of it was still even colorized. I was so like, ooh, this is not my time. This is not my grandparents' time. My grandmother's born in 1920. It is after the war, right?
Well, so people are fighting with sticks and bayonets and and on horseback. It was another world, and
another world,
and it is like we are definitely at that point where World War II is
slipping.
It's definitely is. Like there's no doubt.
Memory,
and the majority of the survivors today, a lot of them would have been children at the time, right? So their experiences are vastly different. Like, it's rare to sit with a Holocaust survivor today, for example.
Yeah.
Who was a teenager at the time.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to be born in 1920 to be really of any consequential.
So then they're like 100 years old, right?
Yeah,
and that have like those last memories. And unfortunately, like I said, almost all the survivors that I became incredibly close with, like Edward Mossberg, for example, who you met multiple times, is no longer with us. And it's kind of at times like this where you really have to grab yourself and say, okay, what would they do? What would their direction be? How would they look at this situation? And honestly, going back to October 7th, I'm glad that some of these survivors aren't here to witness that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They would have been broken. Now, there's one survivor I know who I met recently in Beverly Hills, an incredible man in Los Angeles. And we have this Torah project where the survivors write letters in the Torah with me. And I'll often say, like, would you like to write a letter in honor of somebody? And he said, I'd like to write it in honor of my siblings who were killed in the camps, in the concentration camps. And we sat there and I wrote letter after letter after letter. And he just sat there and mentioned all 8 of his siblings' names who died in the camps. He then, over the last 2.5 months, I mean, he's not stopped crying.
Mm-hmm.
To see this happen to your people again. And memory is slipping away.
Yeah.